They won't believe you. No one's looking for you anymore, the man whispered, tightening his grip on the elderly veteran's shoulder. Matthew trembled visibly as his eyes met Jason's across the checkout counter. Then, with deliberate slowness, he made a hand gesture only another veteran would recognize. Jason Miller stood behind the register at Value Mart, scanning groceries while maintaining his practiced customer service smile. 6 months into civilian life after 2 tours in Afghanistan, the supermarket job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Years of military training had honed his observation skills, a habit that saved his squad more than once in combat zones. Through the afternoon rush of customers, an elderly man caught Jason's attention. Perhaps 74, with weathered features and thinning white hair. He wore a faded flannel shirt beneath a simple canvas jacket, well-worn jeans, and scuffed but polished shoes. Despite his stooped posture, something in his bearing suggested military discipline. The man's companion, younger, perhaps 40, in an expensive leather jacket, maintained constant physical contact with the older man, fingers digging visibly into his shoulder. Uncle Matthew needs his medication soon, the younger man announced loudly when the cashier asked about their day. Dementia's getting worse, aren't you, Matthew? The elderly man nodded silently, but Jason noticed his eyes, clear and alert, briefly meeting his before looking away. On his worn canvas jacket, a small Veterans Affairs pin caught the fluorescent light. Vietnam? Jason asked casually, gesturing to the pin. Before the older man could answer, his companion interrupted. Navy 1968. He doesn't like talking about it. Come on, Matthew, we need to hurry. As they moved forward in line, Jason saw the older man wince when the younger one gripped his arm tighter. Something wasn't right, and Jason's combat-honed instincts were screaming danger. As Jason scanned their items, he studied the pair more carefully. The younger man had placed minimal groceries on the belt, mostly ready meals and a large bottle of sleeping pills. His expensive watch and designer clothes contrasted sharply with the veteran's worn attire. Your total is $42.87, Jason said, deliberately making eye contact with the elderly man. Uncle Matthew will pay, won't you? The younger man nudged him roughly. Use your pension card. With shaking hands, Matthew withdrew a veteran's benefits card and a worn wallet. Jason noticed bruising around his wrist as his sleeve rode up, distinct finger-shaped marks in various healing stages. Sir, are you all right? Jason asked quietly. He's fine, the younger man snapped. Just arthritis, right, Matthew? Matthew nodded mechanically, eyes downcast. As he handed over his card, his fingers brushed Jason's, and Jason felt a small piece of paper pass between them. I need your pin, Uncle, the younger man said impatiently, positioning himself to see the keypad. Matthew entered it slowly, shoulders hunched. Your receipt, sir, Jason said, returning the card. When Matthew reached for it, Jason glimpsed more bruising on his forearm. We should get your prescription filled, the younger man said, pulling Matthew away. Remember what happens when you don't take your meds. As they gathered their bags, Jason discreetly unfolded the note. Help, not nephew. Took savings. A woman in line behind them frowned. Is that elderly gentleman okay? She whispered to Jason. I've worked in elder care for 20 years, and something seems off. I'm concerned too, Jason replied quietly. The younger man steered Matthew toward the exit, constantly scanning for security cameras. Jason observed how Matthew calculated each step, his movement suggesting someone navigating a dangerous situation rather than cognitive decline. 1 more hour, Jason heard the younger man mutter. Then we're closing your accounts. The manager approached Jason's register, lines backing up Miller. Pick up the pace. Sir, Jason said quietly, I think that elderly veteran is being abused. Not our business, the manager replied. Focus on your job. Jason nodded, but continued watching as the pair approached the exit. The elderly man glanced back once, his eyes conveying a desperate plea that stirred something primal in Jason. The same instinct that had once made him run toward gunfire to save a wounded comrade. Near the store exit, an elderly couple slowed the pair's progress. Beautiful day for shopping, the woman said kindly to Matthew. Are you finding everything all right? We're in a hurry, The younger man interrupted. My uncle tires easily. I taught at the VA hospital for years. The woman persisted. I recognize a proud Marine when I see one. Navy. The younger man corrected irritably. He was Navy, not Marines. Jason, who had requested a register break, moved closer, pretending to restock a nearby display. He noticed Matthew's slight reaction to the military branch mistake. A veteran would never confuse his service branch. My husband served in Vietnam, too, the woman continued. Which unit were you with? Matthew opened his mouth to answer, but the younger man cut him off. He doesn't like discussing it. PTSD? I understand, the woman said, but her eyes showed concern. My Roger was the same way. Your name is Matthew, right? I heard him call you that. Matthew nodded almost imperceptibly. That's strange. Her husband joined in. There's a Matthew Wilson on the missing veterans list at our community center. Disappeared 3 weeks ago. Similar appearance, too. The younger man's expression hardened. Common name. My uncle's Matthew Brooks. We really must go. Of course, the woman said, but deliberately blocked their path for another moment. Is that a 3rd Battalion pin on your jacket? Roger has the same one. Matthew's eyes flickered with recognition. He collects memorabilia, the younger man said sharply. Doesn't even know what half of it means anymore. Now excuse us. As they moved toward the exit, Matthew stumbled, almost falling. When the younger man roughly pulled him upright, his wallet fell. The elderly man bent to retrieve it, revealing an ID card that slipped partially out. Sir, you dropped this, Jason called, approaching and catching a glimpse of the name, Matthew Wilson. The younger man snatched the wallet, shoving it into Matthew's pocket. Mind your own business, he hissed at Jason, then turned to Matthew. Walk properly. You're making a scene. As they neared the automatic doors, Jason saw determination flash across Matthew's weathered face. With the exit just steps away, Matthew made his move. His right hand rose in what might appear as adjusting his collar, but continued with deliberate precision. Fist closed and opened, then pressed flat against his chest with 2 fingers extended. The veteran's distress signal, designed for those who know to recognize it. Jason froze, instantly recognizing the gesture taught in military training for situations when verbal communication was impossible. He'd learned it was adapted from POW signals and now used by veteran support organizations nationwide. The younger man caught Matthew's movement, his face darkening. What are you doing? He snapped, grabbing the elderly man's wrist so hard Matthew gasped. Hey! Jason called out, abandoning his display restocking. Sir, could you wait a moment? Store security approached, alerted by the raised voices. Problem here. This employee is harassing us. The younger man said smoothly, We're leaving. That man just gave the veteran's distress signal. Jason stated firmly. Sir, he addressed Matthew directly. Are you Matthew Wilson? The older man's eyes widened. This is ridiculous. The younger man spluttered. My uncle has dementia. We're leaving now. Your uncle gave a deliberate distress signal, Jason insisted. And you called him Matthew Brooks earlier, but his ID says Wilson. Store security positioned themselves between the pair and the exit. We should sort this out, the guard said. You have no authority to detain us, the younger man argued, pulling Matthew toward the doors. This is false imprisonment. I serve with the 5th Regiment, Jason said directly to Matthew, ignoring the younger man. Afghanistan, 2018. When did you serve, sir? Matthew straightened slightly, military bearing briefly visible through his frail frame. 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines. Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. He's confused, the younger man insisted, panic creeping into his voice. We need to leave now. Sir, Jason addressed Matthew again. Are you being held against your will? The store had grown quiet, customers watching the confrontation unfold. The elderly couple who had spoken earlier moved closer. That's Matthew Wilson, the elderly man confirmed. His picture's been in the veteran's newsletter, missing for 3 weeks. The younger man's grip tightened visibly on Matthew's arm. Last chance, he hissed. Remember what I said about your grandchildren. Matthew's face showed fear, but something else emerged. The remnants of military courage, resilience forged in combat decades earlier. My name is Matthew Wilson, he said firmly, and this man is not my nephew. He's confused, the man insisted, voice rising. I'm Thomas Brooks, his nephew. I have power of attorney. Then you won't mind waiting for police to verify that. The security guard replied, radio already in hand. Customers formed a protective semicircle, smartphones recording the confrontation. The store manager hurried over, alarmed by the gathering crowd. What's happening? He demanded. This elderly veteran gave a distress signal, Jason explained. His ID doesn't match what this man claims, and there's evidence of physical abuse. Show them your power of attorney, Matthew challenged, gaining confidence. Show them the papers. They're at home, the younger man stammered. This is outrageous. My uncle has severe dementia. Yesterday he thought I was his commanding officer. The elderly woman who had spoken earlier approached Matthew. Sir, our veteran center has been circulating your photo for weeks. Your daughter has been desperate to find you. My daughter? Matthew's voice cracked with emotion. You have no daughter, the younger man insisted frantically. It's the dementia talking. Jennifer, Matthew said, voice strengthening. My daughter's name is Jennifer Wilson Patterson. She lives in Oak Ridge with her husband and my 2 grandchildren. The younger man's face transformed, charm evaporating into cold fury. Nobody's listening to a senile old man, he snarled, abandoning his caring facade. We're leaving now. He yanked Matthew's arm violently, causing the elderly veteran to cry out in pain. Jason stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between them and the exit. Sir, release him now, Jason commanded, military authority returning to his voice. You're making a huge mistake, the man hissed, eyes darting between the growing crowd and blocked exits. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The store manager, seeing the situation escalating, nodded to security. Police are on their way. Let's all stay calm. I'm not staying for this nonsense, the man snapped, releasing Matthew's arm and reaching inside his jacket. Jason tensed, recognizing the movement patterns of someone accessing a concealed weapon. His combat training kicked in as he positioned himself to protect Matthew and the civilians behind him. Everyone back, Jason shouted, just as the man's hand emerged with a switchblade. Stay back, the man shouted, blade glinting under fluorescent lights. Matthew, come here now. The elderly veteran stood his ground, decades-old courage resurfacing. No more lies, Robert, or whatever your real name is. Several customers retreated, but the security guard and Jason held their positions, forming a protective barrier around Matthew. The police will be here in minutes, the manager announced, voice shaking. Put down the knife. Matthew, tell them this is a misunderstanding, the man insisted, desperation evident. Your real name isn't even Thomas, Matthew said, addressing the stunned onlookers. He approached me at the Veterans Memorial 3 weeks ago, claiming to be a nephew I'd lost touch with. I have no nephews. He drugged me, took my phone, my ID, and has been emptying my accounts. He's delusional, the man shouted. Then explain the bruises, Jason challenged. Explain the veteran's distress signal. Explain why his ID says Wilson when you called him Brooks. Sirens wailed in the distance. He forced me to call my bank, Matthew continued, gaining strength with each word. Made me change my PIN, kept me drugged, threatened my family if I tried to run. 2 police officers entered through the main doors, hands moving to their holsters when they spotted the knife. Drop the weapon, they commanded. In the moment of distraction, Jason noticed a man's eyes calculating escape routes. He'd seen that look before in cornered insurgents, the desperate preparation before a final, violent act. He's going to charge, Jason warned quietly to the security guard. As if confirming Jason's prediction, the man lunged forward, knife aimed at Matthew. If I'm going down, you're coming with me, old man. Jason reacted with combat-honed reflexes, intercepting the attack with a fluid motion that deflected the knife hand while simultaneously shielding Matthew. The blade sliced through his uniform sleeve, drawing blood, but Jason barely registered the pain as training took over. "Veterans stick together," he shouted, executing a precision takedown that immobilized the attacker without excessive force. Police officers swarmed forward, securing the screaming man, while paramedics rushed to check both Jason and Matthew for injuries. "You saved my life, son," Matthew said, tears welling in his eyes. "I never thought I'd make it home." As police handcuffed the attacker, he thrashed violently, spitting threats. "You're dead, both of you. My people will find you." Breaking free from one officer's grip, he lunged again, this time toward Jason. With practiced precision, Jason sidestepped, using the attacker's momentum against him in a controlled defensive maneuver that sent him crashing into a display. "Stay down," Jason commanded, but the man scrambled for his dropped knife. In the ensuing struggle, the attacker's wallet fell open, revealing multiple ID cards with different names. Robert Keene, Thomas Brooks, Daniel Williams, an Officer Reed. "Looks like we've got a professional elder scammer. He's part of a ring targeting veterans," Matthew explained, voice steadier now. He mentioned others, said they'd taken millions from useless old soldiers across the state. The man lunged once more in desperate fury, managing to grab a knife and slash wildly. Jason deflected the attack with his forearm, wincing as the blade carved a second gash, before executing a precise strike that finally incapacitated the attacker. As officers secured the now unconscious man, paramedics rushed to Jason, who stood breathing heavily, uniform torn and bloody. Just like Kandahar, he managed with a grim smile to Matthew. "Except the merchandise is less explosive." 3 hours later, Matthew sat in the store manager's office, reunited with his sobbing daughter Jennifer and his grandchildren. "Dad, we've been searching everywhere," she cried, embracing him. "The police said if it wasn't for this young man." Jason, arm now bandaged, stood nearby with police officers. Mr. Wilson's testimony confirms this is part of a larger elder abuse ring targeting veterans, Detective Martinez explained. His captor had drained nearly $30,000 from his accounts already. The store manager approached Jason awkwardly. "About leaving your register without permission." "Sir, with respect," Jason interrupted, "I'd make the same choice again." "Actually," the manager replied, "corporate called. They want to commend your actions publicly. Turns out having an employee save a decorated Vietnam veteran from a predator is good publicity." Matthew reached for Jason's hand. "2 generations of Marines looking out for each other. That's what we do, isn't it, son?" Jason nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Always, sir. Always." 1 week later, Jason stood uncomfortably in his dress uniform as the mayor presented him with a Civilian Bravery Award. Beside him, Matthew sat tall in his own Marine dress blues, medals gleaming under the lights. "Thanks to these men's actions," the mayor announced, "police have arrested 6 members of an organized ring targeting elderly veterans across 3 states, recovering nearly $2 million in stolen assets." The investigation had revealed a sophisticated operation that identified isolated veterans, gained their trust, and systematically drained their retirement funds while keeping them virtually captive. This case has highlighted the vulnerability of our elderly veterans. A police spokesperson explained to reporters, "We're implementing new protocols with banks and veterans organizations to protect those who once protected us." Matthew's story had gone viral, appearing on national news and veterans advocacy channels. Retirement communities nationwide were now teaching the veterans' distress signal to staff and residents. "I never thought I'd serve my country again at 74, Matthew told reporters. "But if my story helps protect even one other veteran from these predators, then I'm still fighting the good fight." Jason stood by his side, their shared military bond bridging the 50-year gap between their services. Today, Matthew volunteers at the Veterans Crisis Center, teaching the hand signal that saved his life to new generations of service members. "Would you recognize this signal if you saw it?" he asks groups. "It could save a life, maybe of someone who once risked everything for our country." Jason, now working in Veterans Affairs after Value Mart promoted him to their community outreach division, regularly visits schools and community centers with Matthew. "When you see an elderly veteran," Jason tells audiences, Remember, they weren't always old. Once, they were young warriors who signed blank checks payable with their lives. What would you do if you saw a veteran in danger? Would you recognize the distress signal Matthew used? Sometimes the difference between tragedy and rescue comes down to one person paying attention when others look away. If this story moved you, please comment with respect to honor our veterans. Subscribe for more stories that showcase the unbreakable bond between those who served. And share this video to spread awareness of the veterans' distress signal.